Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and if you're new to this series, we built this 5-acre pond over the past year, and it took us several months to get all of the dirt excavated, and we had to bring in several truckloads of clay, and we also built an island, a dock, and got all the structure in place, and then it took a couple of months to get it full of water. After that, we stocked it with a bunch of bait fish, including bluegills and threadfin shad, and not long after that, we stocked it with these little 2-inch aggressive bass. And we're going to be giving you an update on them here in just a minute and showing you how big they've gotten. But before we get into that, our friend Mother Nature threw us some curveballs these past few weeks. It started out with record heat, several days over 100 degrees, followed up by some pretty bad storms with heavy rainfall and a lot of lightning. So unfortunately, everything that used electricity out here was fried. Our Starlink, all the dome cameras that we use to film the wildlife out here at the pond, the compressors for all the diffusers in the pond, and even our underwater green lights. That one really hurt. So I apologize for the lack of videos recently, but I've been working hard to get everything back to normal. And the most time sensitive was the diffusers. This is a really crucial time of year because when the water temps get that hot, the dissolved oxygen can get really low, especially down in the deeper water. So if the diffusers stay off a few days and let that water settle, you'll create dead zones in the pond, and then when you turn the diffusers back on, when those different layers mix up too fast, you can have major oxygen problems and even create fish kills. So we got the diffusers back up and going. I also had to replace about 5 GFCI circuits. And all the fish are happy that we got the underwater lights back on. But I had to replace some of those dome cameras. I even upgraded this one. It's got a windshield wiper on it. So we're always going to have a nice clean picture on this one. And with all that heavy rain, we came very close to flooding the prawn pond. And if you're not familiar with them, this is an adult-sized prawn, and we stocked about 7,500 juveniles earlier this spring, and this is what they looked like a few weeks ago. But I wanted to speed up their growing process a little bit, so I doubled their feed. And I basically set up the protein pellets to come out twice a day. Now we've been giving the prawns a heavy dose of the protein pellets, so I'm interested to see if they're growing. So I'm actually going to try to use this little micro fishing rod and catch a couple of them and see how big they've got. I'm just going to put some ham or either a protein pellet on this little small hook. And fishing for prawns is actually kind of popular over in other countries, especially when they get bigger. Alright, I couldn't catch any on the rod and reel. I think they're a tad too small, so I got 2 different types of traps out here. Basically, the prawns are going to swim in here into that hole going in for the ham, and then the bigger ones won't be able to get out of these holes. Now the smaller ones, they're going to slide right through there. So same style trap, just a little bit different design. These holes are a little bit smaller, so let's try them both out. All right, let's check the traps, see if anything's in them. Got a big boy in there. Now that is almost the perfect size for feeding them to the bass. I guess the bigger ones that are this size, it's time to start moving them over to the 5-acre pond. These bass are about to have some nice treats. Check this other trap real quick. Yeah, that trap works a lot better. There's a bunch of them down there. Man, they've grown quick. Tell you what, I think I'm gonna leave those in there, and then we'll go out tonight under the lights and see if the bass want to try eating any of them. That'd be perfect. All right, checking the prawn traps one more time. And check this out. Got a little tadpole halfway turned into a toad there. We got several of the prawns. There's a good look at them right there. So we're gonna do a little fish feeding tonight. That's perfect size. Feed to the bass. Also got some golden shiners in there, so we'll see how it goes. We got the birds taking over Alcatraz Island there, but I wanted to give you an update on the algae issue we were having out here at the pond. So in the last video, we stocked the pond with 1,000 adult tilapia to help eat some of the algae and also treated it with a beneficial bacteria. And thankfully, one of those 2 is working because a lot of the algae that was on the bottom of the pond is gone. So the very next step was to fertilize the pond, and it created this nice plankton bloom. And that helps prevent future algae from growing because the sunlight can't penetrate through the water far enough to get to the bottom. So we're taking a visibility measurement here with a Secchi disc, and you want it to be somewhere in that 22 to 25 inch range. And that's right where we're at. So love it when a plan works out. And also that fertilizer and plankton is going to help feed all of those bait fish and fry that hatched earlier this spring. So a good food supply for all the fish. So I'm out here about to weed eat the island, and you can see we got a lot of bahia grass. That's the long, skinny stemmed type grass. And the funny thing is we never planted bahia grass out here, but my best guess is that when we were cutting up there, the seeds washed over here to the island, and it doesn't take many of these. And as soon as this grass starts growing, it spreads pretty rapidly. You can see all the seeds there. But like it or not, we got bahia grass on the island. And bahia grass isn't the only thing that made it out here. We also have peanuts on the island. Let's see if there's any peanuts down below. There you go. Fresh peanuts out here on Alcatraz Island. And today's cookout is brought to you by HelloFresh. And if you live out in a remote location like our farm, it's a perfect fit because they provide all the meat, vegetables, and ingredients for a full cooked meal directly to your doorstep. And it's very simple. You just hop on their website, pick a few meals out, and they have over 40 options each week. And for this week, I chose steak tacos, Parmesan crusted trout, and bourbon steak with chive butter. And the thing I really love about HelloFresh is they provide a cheat sheet for each meal. So one side's going to have all the ingredients that are included, but if you flip it over on the back, you'll see all the pots and pans and cookware you need to bust out. And then it gives you step-by-step instructions with pictures included that make it really easy to learn new recipes. So today we're going to try out the backyard bourbon steak, and you get started by chopping up all the vegetables. And you also chop up a piece of ciabatta bread. I think I pronounced that right. But I told Liz that was a new one for me. I feel like we're basically making croutons to go into this dish. But you get the vegetables coated in olive oil and salt and pepper, and get them started cooking on the stovetop. And at the same time, we're getting a cast iron skillet hot and cooking the steaks for about 5 minutes on each side. And after the vegetables are done, we're getting everything mixed together, including the special sauce. And as always, I'm very impressed with the high quality ingredients, and walking through each step of the recipe was extremely easy. So I'm a big fan of HelloFresh, and if any of you are interested in trying them out, you can click the link in the video description or go to hellofresh.com and use code POG BAMAJUL50 for 50% off plus free shipping. And you can customize these meals based on your needs and also save time and money by not having to go to the grocery store. And each meal takes 30 minutes or less to cook. It's going to be tough to beat that, folks. And while I was cutting the grass, I noticed several duck eggs out here on the island. And we've got our pet ducks that live out here at the pond, but there's also some wild ducks that stop by. So I decided to set up a camera to see who it was laying the eggs on the island. And check that out, folks. It's 2 of the whistling ducks from last year. And if you guys recall, they were the first 2 wild ducks to come in, and they hatched 10 baby ducklings and raised them here at the pond until they were all able to fly off. But my best guess is that the 2 adults came back, and it looks like they're looking for a spot to have some more babies. And unfortunately, this is a wood duck nest that they're trying to get into. And it looks like I may have to cut that hole out just a tad bit bigger, because a wood duck is a pretty small duck. And you always want to keep the hole just big enough for the ducks to get in so none of the bigger predators like the owls or ospreys can get in and then interfere with the ducks. But this pair looks determined. And even if they can't use this one, we got several other nests out here at the pond. And look who it is. Looks like we got a mama duck defending her turf. So maybe one of the mallard hens was laying the eggs out here on the island, and she's trying to run the wild whistling ducks away. But at the end of the day, it looks like everybody's finally getting along. And one of my favorite things to do is come out here at night. It's one of the only times I can really interact and see the fish. I'm also still waiting on the day that Bonnie or Clyde swims up to me at one of these lights at night. But one thing that amazes me this time of year is the variety of different sized fish that make it around to the lights. It starts with the tiniest fish that looks like they just hatched today, and then progresses from there to basically every different sized bait fish we have. And once they're drawn in by the lights, that's what brings the predators in. So I'm going to be feeding the bass some prawns and golden shiners tonight. And also over the next couple of months, I'm going to be putting thousands of shiners in here, and most likely I'll put them in at night so we can watch them feed. But I want to start something like a feed training program with the bass. And the way that works is you either use a sound or a visual effect to let them know that the feeding's about to occur, and then through repetition, the bass will hear or see it, and that lets them know it's feeding time. So if you guys have any ideas of different things I should try to trigger that feeding, leave it in a comment down below. It could either be a sound like a dinner bell going off, a song, maybe even the lights flickering on and off a few times. And it may not work for all the bass, but usually those more aggressive ones that like those free and easy meals will always take the bait. And a lot of you have asked about setting up a live stream in the pond, and I played around with that earlier this week, and unfortunately now that we got that plankton bloom, there's just not enough visibility for underwater cameras right now. But since we have all these feedings coming up, I may mount a camera to the side of the dock facing the lights, and at least we could live stream that every night. And one thing I've observed in this particular strain of bass is they get really aggressive whenever they know another fish is eaten. It's happened in several of my fishing trips where you may go 30 minutes without catching a fish, but as soon as one bites, the other ones come up and try to attack the same bait. And you'll start seeing that here tonight. The sounds of the bass hitting topwater is starting to draw more and more fish in. But I've been watching these lights over the past year, and there is one thing that's been very consistent, and something that may help a lot of you fishermen out. And throughout the entire night, the feeding is kind of sporadic. Obviously, the more bait fish that are around the lights, the more bass that come around. But the one thing that is consistent every single night is that the most active feeding time throughout the entire night is the last 30 minutes right before daylight. And I've seen it on nights where even when the fish weren't very active and didn't really show up around the lights at all, they would always still come out and feed just before daylight. So I know there's a ton of you fishermen out there that get on the water right when the sun's coming up. But the next time you go out, you may want to try getting there 30 minutes early and seeing if you can catch some of those active fish. Alright, it's time to check in on Moby and see how he's enjoying the backyard pond. I'm about to get some underwater cameras set up, but first, we got some new arrivals. It's toad mating season, and there's little tadpoles down there everywhere. And I'm always happy to see them come because there's a couple of big benefits. One, it's basically free fish food. But my favorite part about them coming is they clean all the algae off. At this stage, they're basically eating it 24/7, so I wish they'd hang around that size all year long. So now let's take a dive underwater, and the first thing you'll notice is one of the big bluegills is spawning and building a nest right there in front of the camera. And you can see, this is Moby's first time ever seeing a bluegill building a nest, so he's pretty interested, but he's about to find out just how tough a nesting bluegill can be. So if any of you have ever caught bluegills out there, you probably know that pound for pound, they're one of the toughest and hardest fighting fish out there, so it's probably a good thing they don't get too big. But unfortunately for all the other fish and turtles in this pond, this bluegill is putting its nest right in a community hole. And as you can see, she's even fighting off the turtles. Not only that, the golden shiners aren't even allowed to come around. And I've always heard people talk about the amount of stress that spawning fish are under, and just watching this fish for a couple of hours, I can see why. Because the amount of energy that fish is exerting just to guard off the nest area is incredible. It really is a full-time job for this fish, and with species like bluegills, they'll spawn multiple times throughout the summer, so I can see how that would be a stressful life. Alright folks, it is time to do a little frog fishing. And if you're new to this, every time we catch a bass, we insert a pit tag in it so we can track its growth and location around the pond every time we catch it. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you there's about a 90% chance we catch a fish named Apollo. He's the most aggressive bass in the pond, and the last time we came out here fishing a few weeks ago, we caught him twice. Matter of fact, that's his tag, 11570000. Got him. Ooh, just had another one hit the frog. Man, these fish are aggressive. Got a little spot right there on his mouth, making me think I probably caught this one before. Man, when they hear another fish eating, they go into attack mode. Yep, I thought I'd caught this one before. 569643. Alright, this fish weighs 1.47 pounds. And is 14 inches long. Love seeing the topwater action. Oh, that's a good one. Nice hit right there too. Man, this thing's fighting. Alright, this fish is 571341 and weighs 1.41 pounds.
Man, the oak thrown is loaded today. Another one coming up there trying to hit it. That's a good one. Caught this one before, 570971. 14.5 inches, and it weighs 1.63 pounds. Nice. All right, that's a good one.
And this particular fish is named Einstein, and it's been a little while since we caught it, but it likes to eat lizards and frogs and hang out around the oak throne.
Right there off the oak throne. Nice one. All right, this fish has not been caught and is 14 inches and will be 569660, and it weighs 1.32 pounds. I don't know how many casts that is in a row. When you drag it over that oak throne, something's gonna bite it. And I think I recognize this guy. He's got the little sore right there on his mouth with a little piece of algae on it. Caught him yesterday. That's pretty wild. Yep, 69643. No need to weigh or measure him. We just caught him yesterday, but I love how aggressive these fish are. Basically, you can catch them, release them, and they'll turn around and bite again.
And this fish is named Jaws. Same deal with it. Likes to eat lizards and frogs and hang out around the dock and the oak throne.
Good one. Alright, this fish has been caught before, 570036. It's 13.25 inches, and this fish weighs 1.25 pounds. There he is. Caught up to it. Right at the bank. Look at it. Fish has not been caught before. It is 14.5 inches, and his tag is 569766, and she weighs 1.3 pounds. I want to try a little experiment tonight. I've heard that raccoons like marshmallows, so we're going to put a few marshmallows out here just outside of the feeder bowl. We'll see what they think about them.
Man, I sure hope the ducks don't try to eat a marshmallow. That could be a problem. So the first raccoon to show up didn't really seem like he was that interested, but the next big guy to roll through was a big fan of the marshmallows, and I think he cleaned them all out. So I can't remember exactly who it was that told me they eat marshmallows, but they were right. And I'm not really sure if this is a UFO, a floating marshmallow, or what to make out of it. So during all the storms, I changed out the duck feeder and put a lid over it to try to keep some of the duck food dry. Well, let's just say that the raccoons could not figure it out. There's still a feeding trough at the bottom, so it's basically an automatic feeder, and as the animals eat out of the bottom, gravity just feeds more food down to them. But the raccoons weren't having it, and they said we're going to go straight to the source. And a flock of white birds coming through the next morning. And George Jones always makes an appearance, but he's too late for the marshmallows.
Alright, down here at the deer plot, the bucks are in velvet, so we're going to throw out some protein pellets for them to help them grow those antlers out. Peanuts, roasted soybeans, and corn. We'll monitor them tonight on that camera, see what comes out.
And I was very surprised to capture this one on camera. Unfortunately, this squirrel wasn't fast enough and the hawk caught up to him, but that's Mother Nature. Hawks gotta eat too. And a coyote coming through the bean field. And a buck in velvet stopping by to eat. And folks, if you feed your deer, this is the time of year you want to be feeding them a high protein source. Especially if you want those bucks to develop big antlers, the peanuts and soybeans and other high protein sources are what's going to make a big difference this time of year. The coyotes stopping by to pee on the food, our market spot. They really are a pain for all the deer. But it is nice to be able to track their growth, and here over the next month or two, we might even be able to recognize some of these bucks from last year and see which ones survived through the winter. And the raccoons playing cleanup and finishing off whatever's left. But speaking of eating protein, I found this frog right in the middle of a peanut stash. And I don't know if frogs eat peanuts, but it looks like this guy's been putting on the pounds. Now it's time to check in on some of these aggressive bluegills. And the one thing I was excited to see is a lot of smaller bluegills are starting to make it to the feeders, which means we had a really successful bluegill spawn. And you can tell there's a lot more fish coming around during each feeding. So I bumped up their feeding cycle. I was putting out 3 seconds worth of food each feeding, but now we bumped that up to 5 seconds. And I'm a little surprised we hadn't seen any bass feeding activity when these feeders go off, but I think once those bass hit around that 2-pound threshold, that's when we may start seeing some fireworks. So after we moved Moby to the backyard pond, we drained the 300-gallon aquarium and did a blackout to kill off all the algae that was present in there and get the tank ready for Tiger to move in. And one extra step you can add in is spraying some hydrogen peroxide. And now it's time to fill it up. And this is Tiger's last feeding in this small tank. He's getting moved out today. So here's a tip for all aquarium owners out there. Before you ever put fish in an aquarium, you should always test to see if it's cycled. And cycling basically means that the nitrate, nitrite, and ammonia levels are all correct. But it's very important because most fish can't live in aquariums that have not been cycled. But it's a quick and easy test, and for this kit you scoop some aquarium water out and add some drops from these containers, and you know you'll have a cycled aquarium whenever the ammonia and nitrites are 0, but you have small levels of nitrates. And our test results are in, and the ammonia and nitrites are 0, and nitrates are somewhere around 5 parts per million, so that's perfect. We have a cycled tank. Time to add Tiger. It's always interesting to see how they act when there's a big change. And I can remember when we added Moby into this tank, he shot around and ate up all the shiners he could find. But it looks like Tiger's a little more laid back and probably acts a little bit more like most fish would, just taking a minute to get acclimated to everything. But you can see he's got a lot more room to swim around. Should be one happy bass. And you can see his color pattern's a lot better under these nice bright lights. So we let him get settled in last night, and the best way to test him out and see if everything's good is a feeding. And you can see he's a little hesitant, but he's eating good. So happy to see the transfer went smooth.
Check out this new vegetation that popped up here. It's kind of like some of the plants we have in our backyard pond. Probably brought over from the birds, blue herons. I think I may leave them there for now. Do a little research on them about how quickly they spread. We don't want them punching a hole through the clay blanket, but any extra little vegetation on the edge that comes naturally where the ducks can hide out. All right, folks, out here at the pond cutting some grass this afternoon, and you can see it's easy to get to all these spots with a mower, but right out here on the pond's edge, it can be tough. So over the past year and a half, I've been weed eating, and you can tell by the time I get all the way around the pond, it's a little job. But shout out to a company called Moschio. They've been watching the videos, they're big fans, and they were generous enough to send over what is known as a flail mower. So basically it hooks up to the back of the tractor, but it's got 2 pivot points, and so the mower can swing out and offset away from the tractor, so as I'm driving down there, I can mow all this grass. And not only can it swing out, it can also tilt like this. So folks, you don't realize how much time that's going to save me weed eating throughout the year.
Alright folks, that's going to wrap up this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of exciting things coming up here in the next few weeks. But I hope y'all enjoyed this one, and we will see you all next time.